At some point in your life, you gave someone your complete trust, your real thoughts, your actual fears, the things you'd never say out loud in public, and somewhere along the way, that person used it. Maybe not dramatically, maybe just quietly, in a way you felt, but couldn't quite prove. That feeling you had after, that was your intelligence arriving too late. Ernest Hemingway is widely credited with the observation that the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them completely. Comforting advice. Expensive advice too, because some of the sharpest, most capable people who ever lived reached the opposite conclusion and built entire careers and legacies around it. Niccolo Machiavelli spent his life studying exactly why. 7 realizations. Each one arriving quietly, usually after someone got burned first. Don't skip a single part of this video, because one of these 7 is the exact reason someone close to you already knows more than they should. Number 1. A promise is not a guarantee. It's a hope wearing a costume. Someone promised you something last month, last year, maybe just last week. And you believed them, not because they had proven anything, but because the promise sounded right, arrived at the right moment, and said exactly what you needed to hear. That's not foolishness. That's simply how most people are built. Thomas Hobbes wrote something centuries ago that cuts straight through this. Covenants without the sword are but words, and of no strength to secure a man at all. Strip away the old phrasing, and the point still lands hard. A promise means almost nothing unless something real stands behind it. Consequence, cost, a reason the other person actually has to follow through, beyond simply wanting to seem like someone who does. Niccolo Machiavelli built an entire political philosophy on a version of this same warning. He cautioned that a ruler who governed purely through goodwill, through promises, through the hope that people would do right by him, was one difficult season away from being abandoned completely. Not because people are inherently cruel, because promises without enforcement are, functionally, just noise that happens to sound reassuring. Watch how this plays out in an ordinary workplace. A colleague tells you they'll back you up in the next meeting. They mean it in that exact moment, nodding along across the table, but meaning something in a moment of comfort, and actually doing it under pressure, in front of people whose opinion matters to their own position, those are 2 entirely different tests. Most people fail the second one quietly, without ever registering that they failed at all. The smartest people don't get cynical about this. They get precise. They stop asking, did they promise it? And start asking what it would actually cost that person to break the promise, and whether they seem to care about that cost at all. A promise tells you what someone hopes is true about themselves in this moment. It tells you almost nothing about what they'll do once it becomes inconvenient. That gap between hope and consequence is where most of your disappointments were quietly waiting the entire time. Number 2, the danger was never distance, it was access. Think honestly for a second. The deepest wound you've ever carried, who delivered it? Some stranger passing briefly through your life? Or someone who had been standing close enough, for long enough, to know exactly where you were softest? Niccolo Machiavelli devoted real attention in his writing to conspiracies, the plots that actually succeeded in bringing down powerful men throughout history. What he found, consistently and a little unsettlingly, was that these plots almost never came from external enemies. They came from advisors, confidants, people who had been let in close enough to know the exact layout of a ruler's vulnerabilities. Distance limits damage. It doesn't matter how much a stranger dislikes you, they simply don't have the access required to hurt you in any specific, targeted way. Access is what turns dislike into danger. And access is something only the people closest to you are ever given. Lara Shafoucault, writing generations after Machiavelli, offered something gentle, that it's more shameful to distrust your friends than to be deceived by them. A lovely sentiment. Also, once you study how betrayal actually works, a slightly naive one. The people capable of deceiving you most completely were never strangers. They were the ones who had already earned enough access to know precisely how. Think about a close friendship, the kind built over years, full of shared history and real affection. Somewhere in that closeness, your friend learned things about you that almost nobody else knows. Your specific insecurities. What genuinely upsets you versus what you only pretend upsets you. Which pressures, if applied, would actually destabilize you. Most of the time that knowledge just sits there, unused, a natural byproduct of real intimacy. But it doesn't disappear, and under the right pressure, jealousy, competition, a real strain in the friendship, that knowledge becomes available in a way it never was to anyone standing farther away. This isn't a reason to keep everyone at arm's length. It's a reason to understand, clearly and without paranoia, that closeness is not automatically the same thing as safety. Sometimes it's the opposite. The people who could hurt you most severely were never outside your circle. They were always the ones you let in. Number 3. Power doesn't corrupt people, it reveals them. Watch what actually happens to someone the moment real power lands in their hands. A promotion, a title, sudden authority over people who, until recently, were simply their equals. You'll learn more about that person in that single moment than you learned across the 5 years before it. This observation is often attributed, though historians dispute whether he ever said it, to Abraham Lincoln. That nearly anyone can endure hardship, but if you want to discover a person's real character, hand them power and watch what they do with it. Whether or not Lincoln said those exact words, the underlying observation holds up remarkably well under scrutiny. Niccolo Machiavelli built much of his thinking around a related idea that fortune, the shifting pressure of circumstance, is the truest test available of anyone's actual nature. Comfort lets almost anyone appear virtuous. Comfort costs nothing. It's only when circumstances shift, when someone suddenly has something to gain, protect, or lose, that their real priorities surface. This shows up constantly in ordinary leadership situations. Someone who was warm and easygoing as a peer gets promoted above former colleagues, and something shifts. Maybe not dramatically, maybe just a slight coldness, a new tendency to take credit that used to be shared. A subtle willingness to let someone else absorb blame for a decision that wasn't really theirs. None of this makes that person a villain. It makes them human, operating under a new incentive structure that didn't exist before. But it does mean the version of them you trusted before the shift, and the version standing in front of you now, aren't guaranteed to be the same person. The smartest people watch for this specifically. Not with suspicion toward every promotion or every change in someone's circumstances, but with a quiet willingness to update what they believe about a person once the conditions around that person actually change. Character isn't who someone is when nothing is at stake, it's who they remain once something finally is. And you rarely get to see that version of a person until circumstances force it into view. Number 4. What you reveal, you no longer own. You've told someone something you probably shouldn't have, not because you're careless by nature, because it felt good in that specific unguarded moment to be fully known by another person, and you didn't stop to ask what they might eventually do with what you handed them. Benjamin Franklin captured something close to this with characteristic bluntness. 3 people can keep a secret, he wrote, if 2 of them happen to be dead. Beneath the joke is something considerably less funny. The moment information leaves your hands and enters someone else's, you no longer control what happens to it. You're trusting their judgment, their discretion, and their loyalty all at once, indefinitely, without any real mechanism to enforce it. Niccolo Machiavelli advised something remarkably similar to the rulers he studied. A prince's true intentions, he argued, should remain concealed until the exact moment they need to become visible, because anything revealed too early simply hands an advantage to whoever hears it first. This wasn't paranoia on his part. It was an accurate read of how information actually moves through networks of people, most of whom carry their own competing interests. Modern life multiplies this problem considerably. Think about how much of yourself gets shared now, not always through careless conversation, but through the quiet performance of openness that social platforms reward. A vulnerable post, a public reflection on a hard season, a detail shared not because it needed to be said, but because saying it felt like connection in the moment. Some of that sharing is genuinely healthy. Some of it is simply handing strangers, acquaintances, and people who don't actually wish you well a detailed map of exactly where you're currently exposed. The smartest people aren't closed off, they're selective. They understand a distinction most people never bothered drawing: the difference between being known deeply by the right few people and being known shallowly by everyone, without any real control over where that knowledge travels next. Once something leaves you, it belongs to whoever holds it now, not to you, not really. Guard what you can, not because you're hiding something shameful, because ownership, once given away, is exceptionally difficult to take back. Number 5. The first real betrayal changes the entire equation. There was a version of you, before the first real betrayal, who trusted people completely, instantly, without much calculation at all. That version is gone now. Most people spend years quietly mourning that shift, instead of understanding exactly what replaced it. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote at length about rulers who forgave betrayal without adjusting anything about how they governed afterward, and how consistently those rulers found themselves betrayed again, sometimes by the very same people, sometimes by someone new who noticed the pattern of leniency and decided to test it. Mercy without recalibration, in his reading of history, wasn't wisdom. It was an invitation. A maxim often credited to the Roman writer Publius Cyrus put something similar, more simply. That trust, like the soul, rarely returns once it has genuinely left. Not never, but rarely, and never in quite the same shape it held before. Think about a friendship that survived a real betrayal, a genuine one, not a small misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Maybe the friendship continued. Maybe it even looked, from the outside, exactly the way it did before. But something underneath it changed permanently. A specific caution entered the relationship that hadn't existed previously. Certain things stopped being said. Certain vulnerabilities stopped being shared quite so freely. That change isn't bitterness, whatever people might assume from the outside. It's recalibration. It's the mind doing exactly what it's supposed to do after new information arrives, updating its model of a person based on demonstrated behavior, rather than the comfortable assumption that existed before. The people who struggle most after being betrayed aren't the ones who become guarded. They're the ones who refuse to update anything at all, who keep extending the same blind trust to the same person, hoping enough time or enough apologies will somehow restore what was actually, factually, already broken. The smartest people don't do that. They don't necessarily cut the person out entirely. Sometimes the relationship is still worth preserving in some form, but they stop pretending the trust sits at the same level it did before the breach occurred. Betrayal doesn't just cost you in the moment it happens. It costs you every day after, in whatever form the recalibration takes. Pretending otherwise doesn't heal anything. It just delays the same lesson arriving twice. Number 6. Trust was never meant to be distributed equally. You've probably told your closest coworker the same things you'd tell your oldest, most trusted friend. Same depth, same access. As though the length of time you've known someone rather than what they've actually proven about themselves, was ever the right measurement for how much they deserved to know. Michel de Montaigne wrote about the rarest kind of friendship, the kind so complete that when asked why he loved his closest friend, all he could offer was that it was because his friend was who he was, and Montaigne was who he was. No further explanation existed, because none was needed, but Montaigne was careful to note how vanishingly rare that particular bond actually was across an entire lifetime. Most relationships, by his own accounting, existed well below that standard. Useful, warm, even meaningful, but categorically different from that singular exception. Niccolo Machiavelli reached a strikingly practical version of the same idea in his advice about choosing ministers and advisors. He didn't suggest a prince extend identical trust to everyone in his court. He suggested something layered instead. A small circle given real access to a ruler's actual thinking, and a far more guarded posture extended to everyone else operating around him, regardless of how loyal they appeared. This translates directly into ordinary life, particularly inside workplaces and social circles that often pressure people toward a kind of forced, uniform openness. Team-building exercises, group chats, the quiet social expectation that everyone in your orbit deserves roughly the same version of you. They don't. Some people have earned, through years of demonstrated discretion and consistency, a level of access to your real thinking that others simply have not. Giving everyone that same access isn't generosity. It's a failure to notice that trust was never actually meant to be distributed evenly in the first place. The smartest people build something closer to layered circles, a small center reserved for people who've proven, through pressure, through time, through actual tests, rather than pleasant conversation, that they can hold real weight. And then several outer rings, each receiving progressively less access, none of it personal, none of it cruel, simply accurate. This isn't coldness toward the outer circles, it's precision about where real exposure belongs. Not everyone gets the same version of you. The ones who've earned more, get more. The rest get exactly what the relationship has actually demonstrated it can hold. Number 7. The only trust that never fails you is your own judgment. Here's a question most people spend their entire lives quietly avoiding. If every person you currently rely on disappeared tomorrow, betrayed you, let you down, simply stopped being reliable in the way you'd assumed they always would be, would you still know how to make the right decision, entirely on your own? Most people never actually test that question. They build their sense of security around other people's consistency instead of their own judgment. Which works, right up until someone else's consistency fails, and it eventually does, for nearly everyone, at least once. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote something that reaches directly into this, that a person should trust themselves, because every heart, in his words, vibrates to that same iron string. Beneath the poetry is something remarkably practical. Self-reliance isn't arrogance. It's simply the recognition that other people's behavior is the one variable you were never actually able to fully control or predict in the first place. Niccolo Machiavelli built his entire philosophy around a related tension between fortune, the unpredictable circumstances life hands a person, and virtù, the discipline and judgment a person brings to meet those circumstances. Fortune, he argued, might govern roughly half of what happens to anyone. The other half remains entirely in the hands of the person experiencing it, how they prepare, how they respond, how steady they stay when things shift without warning. This is where dark intelligence stops being about other people at all and becomes something quieter and more demanding. It stops asking, "Who can I trust?" and starts asking a harder question instead. Have I built enough judgment, enough self-command, enough internal steadiness that I'm not actually dependent on getting that first question right every single time? Because you won't. Nobody does. Even the most careful, observant person will occasionally misjudge someone, trust the wrong one, extend access that later gets misused. That's not a failure of intelligence. That's simply the cost of being a person who engages with other people at all. What separates the smartest people isn't a flawless read on human nature. It's a foundation solid enough that when they do misjudge someone, and they will, the damage doesn't reach the center of who they are. Trust others carefully, deliberately, in layers earned rather than given freely. But build the one form of trust that never once requires anyone else's cooperation to hold. 7 realizations, none of them asking you to become cold, closed off, or suspicious of everyone standing near you. All of them asking something quieter, that you finally start seeing trust as something built and tested, not something owed simply because someone said the right words at the right time. The smartest people who ever studied power weren't paranoid. They were precise. They understood exactly what a promise was worth, exactly who had the access to hurt them, and exactly how much of themselves belonged in which hands. You already know which of these 7 hit closest to something real in your own life. You felt it while you were watching. Say it in the comments. The exact moment you trusted the wrong person and what it actually cost you. Someone reading it tonight needs to hear they weren't the only one. Like this video, share it with someone still learning this the hard way, and subscribe, because what comes next goes somewhere even darker than this.